I don't think that I've ever seen the types of election integrity issues that I saw in 2020. And no, I'm not talking about the November 2020 election. I'm talking about the 2020 Republican primary in Ohio, an election that was marred with dark money, illegal corporate contributions, Larry Householder, and eventually significant indictments taking place of some of the key ringleaders. It was all part of a pay to play legislative scheme that was designed to buy Republican House seats that then would be reliable votes on things like House Bill 6 or when the next House Bill 6 came around. One of those candidates was Alan Freeman in Southwest Ohio, District 66, which is part of Claremont County and all of Brown County and close to where I live. I saw what was going on, and I filed an Ohio Election Commission complaint against Alan Freeman based on $290,000 worth of spend that took place in his campaign that had never been reported anywhere on any campaign finance report. After a year and a half, I finally got a decision of a violation having taken place and Alan Freeman being assessed a $50,000 fine. It was grueling, it was painful. I am a very different kind of person. I don't think anybody could have done it. Very few people could have done what I did because it wears you down. The system is designed to protect people like Alan Freeman, not to hold them accountable. Well, one of the people in the Larry Household organization that work with Alan Freeman is Stephen Caraway. Stephen Caraway is the subject of this video, and you're going to see in a little bit some clips of Stephen Caraway's under oath testimony before the Ohio Election Commission. I put out some video clips of Alan Freeman's testimony before the Ohio Election Commission just maybe 2, 3, 4 days before I'm making this video. These clips of Stephen Caraway are also very revealing, and I put in a little bit of Alan Freeman clips as well within this. So Stephen Caraway is a very well-known political consultant, and unlike Alan Freeman, who's ended up with a big fine and fighting it out in court and effectively has David Hubeled himself, Steve Caraway got promoted out of this. So a loyal foot soldier in the absolutely corrupt Larry Householder organization, and a foot soldier that knew something very wrong was going on with the amounts of money that were being spent, the lack of diligence, the lack of paying attention to money. He knew something mobster like was going on. So Stephen Caraway got promoted, and now he's the head of the Ohio House Republican Alliance. That's a new name. It used to be called the House Republican Campaign Committee when it was controlled by Larry Householder and run by Jeff Longstreth. And, they had to change the name because all the people involved got indicted. And so now it's called the Ohio House Republican Alliance. Anybody keeping a scorecard, there was also the prior version before House Republican Campaign Committee was called OROC, and that had to change its name when Speaker Cliff Rosenberger got run out of town by the FBI on corruption charges as well. So Stephen Caraway got promoted out of this. And I like Steve. I think Steve's actually a redeemable guy. I think that he's got to try to get onto a path other than becoming a better version of Greg Simpson in a corrupt political system. It's not worth it. Your soul is not worth a few bucks. And I think that Steve is redeemable. He can come back. I like talking with Steve. Steve and I used to get along very well, but we part ways on whether we're going to be honest or not about what actually happened and whether we're going to believe people should actually be held accountable for what is effectively criminal activity. There's 8 segments of videos that I'm going to play. Each of the segments, as I said, is mostly Stephen Caraway. I put in a few clips of Alan Freeman for context. As we go, I will maybe pause and narrate some of them and give an intro or wrap up on each of the segments. And the first segment is going to be Stephen Caraway talking about being questioned about being paid. He was paid throughout this, but he never shows up on any campaign finance report anywhere. Doesn't show up anywhere. And so that's kind of the questioning in this area is about Stephen Caraway being paid and where he showed up. Let's go ahead and start watching.
Was Mr. Freeman aware that you were being compensated for these services?
I'm sure he was. I don't know. We never discussed my compensation package.
He didn't know how you were getting paid?
I doubt it.
Did he think you were doing this out of the goodness of your heart?
He should know me better than that.
He would know you were being compensated by somebody.
Yes.
Did you ask Stephen Caraway for a report of
This is Alan Freeman.
I did not.
So Alan Freeman, so Stephen Caraway is being paid. Alan Freeman never asked. He knows Stephen Caraway is working with him and being paid. Never asked for information to be able to put it on a campaign report for who's paying for Stephen Caraway. Let's keep rolling.
So when you were a consultant, did anybody ever ask you for information on how much time you were spending with each candidate to facilitate reporting to the candidates on what in kind they should be showing for your time?
No.
Did that strike you as odd?
Not necessarily.
So I just want you to, for a second, to think about this. The guy who's now the head of the Ohio House Republican Alliance, that was the House Republican Campaign Committee that was pumping shitloads of money into candidates, some of it clean, some of it dirty, and things not showing up on campaign finance reports anywhere. I didn't think it was odd that nobody asked him how much they should report of his time working on the Alan Freeman campaign on any campaign finance report. This is the culture. This is why grassroots candidates can't be successful, because those insider candidates that are endorsed by the speaker, endorsed by whoever, there are resources historically that are working for them, that are spending time on them, that are not showing up anywhere. They're not showing up on campaign finance reports properly. Sometimes they are, but a lot of times, and in 2020, there was probably much more time that they weren't. And Stephen Caraway was one of those resources in there. And this guy now is the head of the House Republican Alliance. The next set of videos, clips, is about the spending level being odd. So District 66 is a rural area, the rural side of Claremont County and Brown County. And there was on the order of, just from Alan Freeman, $300,000 spent on his campaign under the banner of Committee to Elect Alan Freeman. In addition, there was probably another $300,000 of dark money from Growth and Opportunity PAC spent just on that race. It's a lot. It's a lot. So Stephen Caraway is going to be asked here about, did this seem odd, the amount of money that was getting spent?
Did you think that during the 2020 primary cycle, the manner of way invoicing was happening, or the amounts of money that were being thrown out, did it strike you as odd?
Could you define odd?
Very unusual, very atypical of any normal political race. You said you've been involved with a lot of races.
Sure.
Was the 2020 primary cycle to you odd in terms of the amount of money or the activities or the invoicing or any aspect?
As you know, Mr. Hicks, campaigns, particularly in 2020 and 2021, are very expensive. Everything is very expensive. Consultants, mail, all of that. I did know that there was obviously large mail projects and things like that going out. Did I really stop and think, my goodness, this is a ton of money? Not necessarily, because again, I've been involved in several house races within, Mr. Hicks, a house race, a competitive one can cost, $300,000 in some cases, depending on what media market. It can cost 7 figures. So obviously for a primary in Southwest Ohio, the campaigns are obviously well funded.
Okay, so I didn't know that was, so you're saying it didn't seem odd to you compared to any other primary race?
I'm having trouble understanding odd. The campaigns were well funded. there certainly wasn't a lack of resources with those campaigns.
So you just heard there the campaigns were well funded. So, which I don't know what that exactly means. But let me help define odd. For District 66, and anybody that lives there, Eastern Claremont County and all of Brown County, the notion of somebody running for House rep spending having $300,000 spent under the banner of Committee to Elect Alan Freeman, and $300,000 worth of dark money being spent, and shitloads of mailers coming in every day at people's houses, and saturation TV buys out of Cincinnati, where the percent of the market that are actually seeing the ads that actually even vote in the race is almost none, is not just odd, it's fucking incredibly odd. It's over the top ridiculously odd. And Stephen Caraway knows that, but he has to parse his words in ways that don't get him in trouble, because he knows if he says it was odd, I'm going to start asking questions about the money, the coordination, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the notion of this, of $300,000 being spent in that district, a rural district of Eastern Claremont County and Brown County, is off the charts odd, like threefold odd, like sixfold odd of what somebody would reasonably be spending on this kind of race. Now, the next set of clips is about the Freeman Ad buy. So Alan Freeman ran, by accounts, $140,000 worth of television advertising out of Cincinnati for his House race that he ended up losing. And you're going to hear about that, and you're going to hear a lot of Caraway and a little bit of Alan Freeman in here. And I say, like, nobody, I authorized this, but I never knew anything about what it was going to cost or the spend, or I knew nothing about that. There's only one thing in my life I'm aware of that would be of significant cost, that there would be nobody else how much that cost is going to be, and that's if my wife took the dog to the vet. Any of you that know pets, the cost doesn't matter on a pet, but I'll tell you what, for a politician, the cost on saturation ad buys matters a lot. So this is going to talk about the Freeman ad buy, and Stephen Caraway talking about it, and then a little bit of Alan Freeman as well. And we're going to start with just seeing one of the ads that was run in this saturation buy of ads that, remember, never showed up on any campaign finance report. To this day, this is the expense for all this has never shown up on any campaign finance report anywhere.
A small business owner, a strong conservative, a family man. Alan Freeman will bring these same conservative values to the Ohio House, building business and a better Ohio for all our families. Alan Freeman for State Representative.
I mean, we're not disputing the TV commercials ran. I knew the TV commercials ran, but the point of, how much of the TV was running, I did not have that somehow.
I think we're disputing whether you filed a complete and accurate campaign finance report.
We were running television commercials, and it would have been done by JPL.
You just said, your words, we were running television commercials.
The reason why that's so important that he said we were running, there's more clips here, is that we were running television commercials, is that he originally denied that they had ever authorized any television commercials in a sworn affidavit. Or that they didn't know whether any commercials that ran were their commercials, or so on and so forth. And now, after a year plus, we're starting to get a different story out of Alan Freeman. But let's pick up.
So I think there were 6 invoices in here. It wasn't go to every station on everything. You never felt, did you ask Susan Jones or anybody, since these were produced in my affidavit, to go research them?
I did not.
So in my affidavit, I had produced 6 invoices that I found not from some big research project, but because the FCC maintains a database of political ad invoices. Alan Freeman had those invoices from my own affidavit for over a year and did nothing, just ignored them, never researched them, never checked them, never did anything to try to make sure that whatever was supposed to be reported by him was properly reported by him. Let's pick up from there.
What order of magnitude cost would you think would have applied to such magnitude of a buy of ads?
I would say obviously north of 6 figures. I'm certain that I knew there was going to be a buy.
Okay. Did you in fact call Nick Owens and give him a tip to let him know it was coming?
I would not say it was a tip. I remember having a conversation with Mr. Owens. As you know, Mr. Hicks, he had a press event earlier in the
On March 6th.
week or whatever it is. I can remember being agitated by that press event, and I may have said, they're probably going to do a big buy on you. You shouldn't have said X, Y, Z.
So you informed Nick Owens in advance that you knew that there was a buy that was going to hit the airwaves.
Most likely, yes.
Did Alan Freeman know there was a buy that was going to hit the airwaves?
I guess, yes. I mean, he's a candidate. He would have known that the television purchase was taking place.
You informed Nick Owens of the ad buy. You knew that the ads were coming. This is your testimony. I think your testimony is that you knew it was a significant ad buy. Okay?
Are
So,
those all yeses? I see you nodding your head.
Yes, I'm sorry, sir.
Thank you.
okay, it's a significant ad buy. You testified that Megan Fitzmartin is where you would have found out about the ad buy. So, ergo, did you find out about the financial volume of the ad buy from Megan Fitzmartin?
I don't recall that Ms. Fitzmartin gave me a dollar figure. Mr. Hicks, as I've testified, if you are going to have an impact in the Cincinnati television market, it's going to be expensive. And, there are 4 broadcast stations, and so if you're buying network television, particularly in Cincinnati, I would bet every penny I've got that it's going to be a 7-figure buy if you're going to have an impact.
Did the candidate express any concern to you at any point in time that there was some sort of unauthorized ad buy going on?
During the campaign?
Yeah.
Not that I can recall.
So you had there Mr. Caraway laying out. He knew that there was an ad buy coming. He gave a tip. Now, he didn't want it to be called a tip. He gave a heads up or whatever you want to call it to Nick Owens, who was also running in the race, that a big ad buy was coming against him. He says there's no way Alan Freeman wouldn't have known about this. As he goes through it, but Alan Freeman had maintained that he didn't know anything about this, that this was done in some unauthorized way. But then you hear Mr. Caraway that Alan Freeman never brought up to him that he was concerned that some unauthorized ad buy had taken place. This was all a rope-a-dope. People knew what was going on. They knew that there was something funky about the money behind it, and they knowingly consciously avoided finding out or even acting it halfway intelligent, because they wanted to go along with this rigged deal whereby being part of Team Householder, magic fairy money comes down into your campaign and you just look the other way and pretend like nothing to see here, just move on. The next set of videos is clips that's going to be about whether Alan Freeman knew the magnitude of the buy. So we were just on the buy, and this is really the magnitude of the buy and other things, because the media side of this in this case was about 140,000. The actual total amount that Freeman didn't report is 290,000. A lot of the balance of that is in print media, which I'll address at the very end of this. But the next set is on the magnitude of the buy.
Mr. Caraway testified that there were discussions about needing to fundraise using the speaker's team to pay off your debt. Were you involved in those conversations?
I was in the conversations with Stephen. Stephen mentioned that it was not uncommon for the speaker's office to do additional fundraising post-election.
So there's something very important to know about this. So Alan Freeman claimed in his campaign finance reporting that he only spent about $15,000 on his whole campaign. At the end of this campaign, he still had like $96,000 sitting in the bank. He had raised like basically $115,000 and said he only spent 15. He had about 100,000 still on hand at the end of this at the end of this very competitive campaign. But they were talking then after the campaign about the debt and the need to fundraise to pay off the debt. Okay. So how do you have a debt? Last time I checked, if I had $115 and I spent 15 and I still had 100, I wouldn't be worried, oh my God, how do I pay off the debt? I better fundraise to pay off the debt. Like, you still have $100 in your wallet. What debt are you talking about? So that's what we're talking about there. Let's pick up from there.
Why would you be engaged in any conversations about paying off your debt if you had $96,000 in the bank and only had 14,000 in expenses?
Because Mr. Caraway was indicating that there was debt, and I wanted to make sure that we cleaned up everything so we could close the books and move on.
And so what became of those conversations?
They ended.
That size of a number, the $290,000 number, were you ever involved in discussions about the campaign having that kind of obligation or that kind of expense?
With whom? That was specifically,
With anybody?
Oh, sure. So you're talking post-primary?
Yes.
Okay.
But no, I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about, within the 30 days after the primary.
Right. So I do know that Mr. Freeman and I had a conversation. I'm sorry, I can't recollect when it was. Was it April, May, June? I'm not sure, of 2020. He did ask me, hey, do you know anything about a bill? And I said, Alan, you need to talk to Columbus about that. And I have testified that I do not remember specifically having a $290,000, 744, 290K discussion with him specifically as it relates to this document.
So you notice there, before I keep it playing, he conflates. He gets very specific. I don't remember having a conversation about $290,742.82. Remember that, okay? And let's keep playing.
Did you tell other people that you had? Did you tell me that you had?
There was some concern.
That's a yes or no question.
Yeah, I do not remember exactly what I talked to you about, Mr. Hicks.
Did you tell Nick Owens that that was the approximate amount?
Notice my word. Did you tell Nick Owens that was the approximate amount? Now let's see what the answer is.
Probably.
How did you know the approximate amount that you told Nick Owens?
Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, based on my experience of knowing that a mail plan cost about this much, obviously there was television, there was a lot of things. I mean, it looked to me like a $250,000 campaign.
But you never discussed that number with Alan Freeman.
I'm certain at some point I had conversations with Mr. Freeman about his invoice, that his concern of, hey, I need to take care of my billing, whatever the case, and in which I told him that he needed to contact Columbus, the folks at JPL Associates or Constant Content or whomever.
If I told you that we discussed the size and scope of Alan Freeman's bill and his knowledge of it, would you have reason to believe I was not telling the truth?
I would have no reason to believe that.
What did you discuss with Anna Lippencourt relating to Alan Freeman's campaign?
Objection, hearsay. I think he can testify what he discussed. He can't testify what she discussed.
I would have discussed with her post-primary in 2020 because I was confident that there was a deficit, Mr. Hicks. And at that point, I was told that they were going to work to raise the money into the Freeman for Committee, whatever it was called, to pay the bill.
And who were they?
The speakers, the sitting House Speaker at the time.
Okay. After March 17th, did you and Alan Freeman ever have discussions about the cost of what was going on and his ability to pay for it?
I am certain that Mr. Freeman and I had a conversation about his cost of his campaign.
And so I'm asking, at that time period, towards the end of the campaign, did you observe having any issues getting Megan Fitzmartin or Anna Lippincard, or even Jeff Longstreth if you needed them, to communicate with you?
No.
Okay.
How would I have found that out but for making that connection to Anna Lippincott or somebody else that's inside JPL? I did not have access to those folks that could answer that question.
Okay, so there's a lot to digest there. So Steve Caraway obviously knew this was he said at one point he says 200 to 250. He knew it was a $300,000 campaign. The number kind of jumps around, $300,000 campaign. They're all worried about fundraising, and suddenly just poof, everything. What happened? Like, we only spent 15,000 and we have 100,000 left over. What happened? I don't know. Did anything illegal, unethical, or immoral? No, we don't know. Let's do something else. Let's go get promoted to be the Ohio House Republican Alliance head, or get promoted to work with Gene Schmidt. We don't want to know nothing about what happened to the 300 grand we thought we were going to have to fundraise that just disappeared into thin air. At that point in time, that money became an in-kind contribution when the campaign never paid it, and Alan Freeman got to keep his 100,000 that never even got paid out of his campaign account. But you see that the kind of, let's just ignore it. Let's just ignore something that appears to be highly unethical, highly immoral, and probably highly illegal. The very last part there, though, was throughout this, Alan Freeman played this game of like, we don't know what's going on, and I couldn't get anybody on the phone. I couldn't get anybody on the phone. So I just threw in that little part at the end there where I asked Caraway, could you get these people on the phone? Oh, no problem. I can get them on the phone. Alan Freeman, I can't get them on the phone. I don't have access to contact anybody to find out about what I should be reporting on my campaign finance report. I said many times during these hearings to the commissioners, but by the way, I think there's about this much passion among the commissioners on the Ohio Election Commission for clean and ethical campaign finance reporting. There's about this much passion. It's all just a bureaucracy. It's all meant to rope-a-dope and play things out. But I kept bringing up along the way is that how can the system function? How can the system function when people so utterly disregard ethical campaign finance reporting that they know that they're having discussions about needing to do fundraising for a big debt, and then just poof, it's gone. Oh, everything's gone. Did anything? No, nothing reported. We don't have to do anything. It's beautiful. By the way, Frank LaRose's office was directly part of this. As corrupt as can be, Frank LaRose's office was directly part of trying to cover all this up, and I might hit on that later. The next set of video clips is about the notion that in a highly competitive campaign, there were three candidates. There's shitloads of money. There's obviously hundreds of thousands of dollars of money getting spent. Did it seem odd that Alan Freeman would have raised 115,000, but says he only spent 15,000 and left 100 grand sitting in his campaign account after the campaign that was never spent in a highly competitive campaign? I just want to throw this in because I think this is just very entertaining to hear this discussion and what Steve Caraway says.
When you found out from me or from that he had, close to 100,000 still in his campaign account after raising 115, did that strike you as odd?
Not trying to be funny, obviously odd. It was unusual, certainly, that a candidate for any public office or any office has that expenditure in their bank account following an election. I mean, generally, you spend these things down, you get a bill, you spend it down, and usually the campaign's running on fumes. They don't even have enough money to buy hors d'oeuvres at the party on election night. You spend all of the money.
So it seemed odd to you that there was so much, as a percentage of his campaign account, that was still in the account in his post-primary.
I'll concur.
So let's break that down again. So he knew that there's a bunch of money left over. It seems odd. And we were having these calls about fundraising to cover the big debt, and everything poof, Just keep the 100 grand, just move on. It sounds like a mob operation, doesn't it? It doesn't sound like a Abraham Lincoln Honest Abe operation. It sounds like a mob operation where, just you don't say nothing to nobody. You don't say nothing to nobody about this. We just move on. Just go out the door. Look the other way. So it was not. It's not just. I love the way he says there because it's very true. You're running on fumes, and you can't pay for the hors d'oeuvres at the party at the end of the campaign because you spend everything you have to try to win the campaign. So he says that aptly, and I would say it's not just odd to have money left over in a campaign. It's freaking unbelievable that you would say that you spent like 12% of the money you raised in a highly competitive campaign. The next segment of videos has to do real quick with whether the disclosure on his campaign finance disclosure, Alan Freeman's, was complete in the eyes of Steve Caraway. He's not the treasurer, but I think this is a very interesting clip it's actually a couple clips of was the disclosure correct for Alan Freeman?
Asking if this is the complete list. This is the complete report for the financial disclosure of everything that would have been.
Commissioner, I can't answer that question because I didn't input this data and didn't receive the bills.
So you were asked by the commission whether this was a complete and accurate, and you said you can't answer that. But you could say that your invoice that you submitted to the Freeman campaign is not reflected on this report. Is that a correct statement?
That's correct.
Okay.
So Stephen Caraway had submitted an expense invoice. Apart from his being compensated, the part that was at the very beginning, he also submitted an expense invoice through Constant Content, which absolutely should have shown up on Alan Freeman's financial reporting, either as a direct expense or as an in-kind, which, by the way, would have been illegal through Constant Content, but it should have shown up on the report, and it never showed up on the report. Should I report anything? Should I do anything? No. You don't say nothing, nobody. You just move on, okay? We just look the other way. We were having the call about raising money for covering the debt, but now all of a sudden we have no debt, and Alan Freeman gets to walk out the door with $100,000. So the next segment of videos has to do with Alan Freeman's mail campaign. So I mentioned that this was all about his media campaign, his TV media campaign, about $140,000. There's another case against Alan Freeman. I can't remember the exact number, but it's a 2021 G that has to do with his direct mail expense. It's actually at Alan Freeman's attorney's request that it would be a separate case. He didn't want it considered with the same case about this would have to do with his mail. And there's a clip here of Alan Freeman in a candidate forum talking about his mail. And then there's some clips of Freeman and Caraway talking about the mail part. This is what I call part two going to come in Alan Freeman, is that he also didn't disclose anything about his mail campaign. Zero got disclosed on his campaign finance report about his mail campaign. Let's watch these clips.
If you look at the direct mail pieces that I've put out, they have my disclaimer on it. They've all been positive. They've all talked about economic development. They've all talked about growth and opportunity.
What did you authorize?
Art.
So you never authorized any mail to actually be sent?
I authorized the art for it to be sent. The dollar amount I did not authorize. I'll say that again.
You were aware mail was going.
Correct.
You talked about it in a campaign forum.
I did.
Who did you think was paying for it then?
Well, we had funds in our bank account. We were also trying to raise more money, and so that's what we do.
So hold on, you had funds in your bank account, but you never authorized it, so that would be, so who did you think was paying for it when it was being done?
At the moment, I had no idea.
I'm asking the number of times mailers were dropped to large volumes of households in an organized way.
Okay, thank you. I understand now. Multiple. I would agree with your assessment that it was 5 to 10. For a 5,000 piece drop, you're looking at, 4 to 5,000 depending.
So I think in reality, this mail campaign was a lot more than 10, and it was a lot more than 5,000 person drops. 10 at 5,000 would be 50,000. I think the $140,000 or so that's not accounted for out of the 290 was mostly all in this mail program, which is the same kind of deal. But you'll find out here, this was it'll be a little harder to bring forward, because here's another trick you can play when you're a crooked politician and you're Larry Householder and you are trying to avoid things. You have an out-of-state printer do the work, because out-of-state companies involved with campaigns are not subject to the jurisdiction of the Ohio Election Commission. So there's another trick you can put in your How to Be a Crooked Politician book. And a company called A Mighty Group handled all the printing for the Larry Householder crooked candidates in 2020, which is located in Pennsylvania. So those are 7 segments, and the very last segment is segment 8. And I just love to I love having this segment in here, because we saw all this stuff that along the way here, and we saw the kind of answers. So I asked, almost towards the end of Steve Caraway's testimony, I asked him if he thought about going to the FBI. Nick Owens had gone to the FBI about this stuff. That's good. That's what people should do. When they see crooked shit going on, they should go to the FBI, not go to the FBI and be glad to take a promotion in the organization. It's wrong. Okay, it's wrong, and I don't know how people get raised and get to the point where couple of bucks is worth your soul and your integrity. But here is when I asked Steve Caraway about the FBI.
You're aware that Nick Owens went to the FBI?
I am, yes.
And that he went to the FBI sometime between the press conference on the 6th that he conducted with other candidates and the March 17th date, somewhere in that range, he went to the FBI.
I am aware of that.
Did you talk with him about that?
Not until after the events unfolded in July of 2020, I was made aware.
Okay. Did you ever consider going to the FBI?
For what reason?
I'm just asking.
Yeah. No.
No? Okay.
So he never considered going to the FBI. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch this. I'm sorry, my talking over it might be distracting, so I'm also going to put a link out that is just to that set of video clips without any of this talking of mine. But this needs to change. I'm going to relentlessly keep focusing on it with this and other candidates. I have a complaint around similar behavior by Gene Schmidt. I have one around Brian Stewart. And isn't it funny to say that the only person trying to hold people accountable is not the actual election commission itself, not our Secretary of State, which is a look the other way machine and protect insiders machine, and people that are involved in corrupt activity, they are rewarded for it with promotions. They are never held accountable. And as I said early on, there's not going to be, I don't, maybe I didn't say it early on, I'll say it now. There is not going to be any accountability. If there is not accountability, there's never going to be change in behavior. If there's not accountability, there's never going to be change in behavior. And it's not just accountability for Larry Householder, which we'll see if that ever happens, or Jeff Longstreth. We're talking about accountability for people that enable these kind of people instead of report them to the FBI when they see these kind of illegal activities going on. And right now, Steve Caraway is the head of the the Ohio House Republican Alliance. He's in press articles in the Dispatch about it. He's working, for the thing. And I hope he's moving towards ethics and integrity. I hope he's moving towards ethics and integrity. And I wish the whole caucus would move towards ethics and integrity. I wish we would quit being a pay-to-play state and a pay-to-play party and a pay-to-play organization. And I wish we would quit having elected officials that look the other way, who should be prosecuting these cases. I'm looking at you, Frank LaRose, that should be moving these things forward and really pressing to have them happen. So thank you for watching. Remember also, I have a set of clips without me talking that is Alan Freeman's highlights from Alan Freeman's testimony. I'm going to put that clip link. I'm going to put the link to just a raw video of this. I'm also going to put a clip, if you're watching this on Facebook, a YouTube clip for this, and then also a clip to all of the. So I'm editing highlights here. I'm putting highlights in, but you can watch all of the hearings. I recorded every hearing that took place in the case against Alan Freeman, and it is online in playlist on YouTube. So you can make sure that you're getting the full story, and that I guarantee I'm not editing anything to paint an incorrect picture. I'm trying to make it easy to see within hours of testimony. The testimony of, I think, Steve Caraway was probably borderline going on like 2.5, 3 hours. So I netted that down to about, the part that was the actual testimony was probably about 14 minutes of the key highlights. But please watch it all. It kind of sucks you in if you start watching it. Thanks for watching now, and hopefully you'll keep watching and want to be part of the fight to take back our state, take back the Republican Party, and get rid of this kind of corruption that ultimately is going to lead us to disaster. Because how can we expect young people to want to follow organizations that are that appear to be openly corrupt, and are not about the let's give you shit? Okay, maybe you settle up with corrupt when you get free shit, but Republicans were not supposed to be about free shit. So thanks for watching. And Steve Caraway, I know you probably watched. There's time to come back, my friend. I want to be your friend again. You come back from that evil path you're on. We don't need another Greg Simpson type in our area, and you are on that path, my friend. And fight on, Alan Freeman. I love seeing your moral and character being revealed through your constant fights. Have a good day, morning, or evening, depending on whenever you watch this. Thanks, everybody.